So I managed to bag a £350 coat for £140, and I've also got a £10 voucher to spend. So in this video, I am going to show you how I would use the nursing process to prepare for financial or cost of living crisis. So let's just jump right in. Firstly, I want to say, don't panic. It's really hard at the moment. People are having to make really difficult choices as to whether or not to heat or eat, and that can't be easy. What is the nursing process? It's essentially this. It helps us to assess, diagnose, plan, implement and evaluate the care that we give to someone. And in this case, I'm using the current financial and cost of living crisis as what we will be working with. So in the first stage, I suggest that you really need to think about assessing your own finances. And when I say this, I mean thinking about what have you got coming in. What are your goings out? Do you have anything extra? But I really want you to take a holistic look, not about what's happening in the next month. I want you to also start thinking about future you, where you're going to be in a year's, 5 years, 20 years time. Not only are you preparing for any crisis now, but then you're future proofing or scaffolding yourself for anything in future. Some of the things I would suggest you want to look at if you aren't already. What is your pension contribution? Are you in a pension from your employer? If you're not, really consider whether or not you should be in it. I'm in a pension, and I think it's one of the best decisions I've ever made. I've been a nurse for going on 20 years, and I've paid into a pension since I was a junior nurse. So that's me future-proofing myself. The other thing I do, I have different accounts. So before I turned 40, I opened a lifetime account, which was for two reasons. One, I use it for saving to buy the home that I'm in now, but also because of that money I can now use towards a pension. So under 40, I'd say get a lifetime ISA account, because it does two things. You can save for a deposit on your first home. You put in money and the government gives you 25% on top. You could put in up to a maximum of 4,000 a year. And you can have it in stocks or cash ISA. I prefer stocks because I've got better returns on my stocks and shares in that account. So really assess yourself, and I would suggest having a monthly budget, because what you want to do in part of this assessing is knowing where every penny that you're working so hard for is going, so that you can account for it. The next thing I think you should think about once you've done that assessment, it will let you know. So we're in the diagnosis stage here. So it's going to tell you one of two things. So are you in debt, or do you have surplus at the end of the month? And it's good to know what the problem is, because if you know what your issue is, then you can treat it, can't you? You can put a plan in place to overcome it. So think of it from that perspective, is what I would say. Next bit is very important. So if we're working on a patient, we'd have done the assessment, and we're thinking we know what the problem is, then we're going to have to do a joint collaborative plan of care. So the next thing you need to do is ensure that you set SMART goals. And essentially SMART means that you're being really specific about what you're doing. So for example, if you're looking at reducing your debt, you're going to think about realistically how much of that you can reduce within that a month, for example. Being measurable, so putting a number to it. So again, if you're making £2,500 a month and you find that you're spending £2,600 a month, you might want to look at your budget at each line to think about where can you make savings of £100 so that you're not overspending at the end of the month. It needs to be attainable. I don't want you to do something that is not going to be attainable for you. You really need to think about what it is that you can achieve in a month's time, and start small, because small increments is going to help you to get where you need to go. make sure it's relevant for you and timely. So I would have said before to think about having a monthly budget, because if you then set a smart goal to say you're going to reduce or do an extra shift to get your £100 more per month, which means that you are going to make extra money to come in on balance, that's what you do. Or you might be in the really good position where you've got £100 spare at the end of the month, and what you might want to do is save that or put that to something in the future, whether that is a holiday, a deposit for a home if that's not something that you've got already. So make sure that it is a smart goal that you set. One of the things that I've heard and I've done in the past as well is as an emergency fund. You that have done any reading around this, you might want to look at like Dave Ramsey's method, or if you look on Money Saving Expert, they have got really good guidance on how you can save money or cost of living crisis and what you can do. But by having an emergency fund to begin, if I needed to go home to the Caribbean, I've got money where I don't need to use my credit card, that I could buy a ticket and just go. Or if you've got a car that you need for work, if something happened with the tyre, the engine, that's money that you've got in your emergency fund that you can just use without going back into whether that's your credit card or your savings. So it's really important that you set this up first. I normally suggest about £1,000 to £2,000. It's in pounds, or think about wherever you're watching this from. But also I've been reading other schools of thought. If you are single, you might want to think £1,000 for yourself. If you've got kids, then maybe £500 for each child, and if you've got a partner. So that's a basic emergency fund that you should have. And there's a suggestion that you look at building this up to 3 to 6 months of your outgoings, because again, that would help. Worst case scenario, if you became ill, lost your job, then you don't have to worry for 3 to 6 months because you've got that saving. And again, there's no expectation that you do this really quickly, but you start with your £1,000 to £2,000 emergency fund, and you keep adding to it to get to the point where you've got that amount of money, or a bit of a cushion for you for any financial or cost of living crisis that we might come across. You start thinking of the plan. So once you've assessed and diagnosed what your issue is, so if you are in debt, you might want to think about, once you've had your emergency fund, how you pay this off. And there's many schools of thoughts, whether you do a snowball, which is essentially paying off the smaller debts first, and then once that's paid off, you add it to the next debt. So you get the idea of a snowball. The other one is what is called an avalanche. So you might look at the biggest debt with the highest interest rates, and you start from that. But again, make sure that whatever you put in place, it's specific, measurable, and for you. The next thing is we've all got lots of stuff in our homes that we might not need or we're not using. So is there an opportunity for you to sell the things that you don't need to have some money coming in? For us nurses, I used to do the odd bank shift back in the day, and actually I say odd, I used to do regular bank shifts because that then becomes part of your income, doesn't it? So you might want to think about doing extra bank or agency shifts, but also you might be thinking, I'm in a band 5, band 6, band 7 job, and actually I'd really like to go for a higher banding role because I'm ready for it. Or also the fact that it will pay a bit more. So do think about applying for new jobs. And because you're watching my channel, I do have videos on how you can, make applications or tips for interviews, etc. So do check those out. It's critical that you continue to review your spending. So when you do your budget, just think about the bills that you're paying, and can you speak to whether that's your utility company, see if you could get a better fare. Or if you're struggling, you can look at working with them to have a repayment plan that again is comfortable for you. There's lots of people I understand who are either out of their broadband or mobile phone contracts. So it's a good opportunity to again shop around and have lower paying such as that. So for example, I'm on Vodafone and I have my Huawei phone that I've had since 2018 before I went to Japan because it took really good pictures. And since my contract went up, I only use a SIM-only card. So I pay about £23 a month for 25 gigs of data. It gives me more than enough data that I need. Something that you might want to think of doing. One of the hacks I use is my partner and I use Revolut card for our food shop, and within that you can set up these things called vaults. You set up these vaults where you can save extra money based on the money that you've got left over from your shopping. So it rounds it up for you. We'll increase that by times 2, times 5, times 10, and that puts it into a little saving vault for you to use any way you want. And we end up saving money with that we then use to buy presents and gifts throughout the years. What's out there that can make your life easier? So here are a couple things I use. I use the health service discount site for anybody that works in health and social care, admin, clinicians, everything in between that you can join for free, and it gives really good discounts. So I used it recently to go to the cinema, paid £8.45 for a cinema ticket in London. It really good value, and there's other things that you can save. I just saw recently that using this card, it can save you up to over £2,262 per year. So really do look at things like this that you can use to help reduce your cost. The other thing that I've got is a blue light card, and that is again essentially for anybody that works in health and social care services, and voluntary care sector workers as well, I think, can apply as well. One of the ways I've used this recently, it's winter, I've looked through my closet, I've put together all the coats I'm not going to wear to give to charity, and I've decided I only need 2 coats really for winter, one that's waterproof and one that I can go out in. So I then went on to House of Fraser outlet website because I do like a bargain, and found a coat Ted Baker for £350, but because it was in the outlet, it was reduced by 50%. And at the time, House of Fraser also had an extra 20% discount on top of the discount. And then I was also able to use my blue light card for it. So I ended up paying £140 for a coat that was badged as 350 quid. And also because I decided to pick it up in store, they were giving a £10 voucher as well. So I managed to bag a £350 coat for £140, and I've also got a £10 voucher to spend. So I see myself wearing it for many years to come. You might also be eligible for tax relief on things such as your RCN membership, NMC registration, uniforms, etc. The other places that you can look for support is RCN Welfare Service. There's a Cavil Nurses Trust, Unison Welfare, as well as Money Saving Expert website. I've talked a lot about the nursing process, but it's all well and good to have a plan, but you do need to go and do it. You need to implement it, and you might want to do one thing at a time, because when it comes to the next stage, which is time to evaluate, you want to understand what worked, can you do better next time, and are there new ideas in terms of things that you will change and update going forward. These are just how I would use the nursing process to prepare myself for a financial crisis and cost of living crisis, not just for now but for future. Do let me know if you found anything in this useful, if you're doing some of this already, if you'd like to see more videos such as this in the comments. Do look at my next video on how you can get some tips on your application, and I've also got a really good interview that I've done with a nurse who's just been given a director of nursing role. So do have a look at that, and let's be bold and brave together. Bye.